Good evening. We begin tonight with breaking news. President Trump has just fired the chairman of the Joint Chiefs of Staff, his top military advisor. He made the announcement on social media, quoting from his post, "I want to thank General CharlesQBrown for his over 40 years of service to our country, including as our current chairman of the Joint Chiefs of Staff. He's a fine gentleman and an outstanding leader, and I wish a great future for him and his family." The president went on to say, "Today I'm honored to announce that I'm nominating Air Force Lieutenant General Razin Caine to be the next chairman of the Joint Chiefs of Staff." Now, Defense Secretary Pete Hegseth had previously called for General Brown's firing because of his, quote, woke focus on diversity, equity, and inclusion programs in the military. Hegseth, on a radio show last fall said, or a podcast last fall said, first of all, you got to fire the chairman of the Joint Chiefs. And he went on to talk about how any general involved with DEI efforts should be fired. Either you're in for war fighting and that's it, he said. CNN's Caine has more reporting on this, and she joins us right now. It's not entirely unexpected, especially since the new defense secretary has been talking about this before he was even being considered for that job. How much of this is about DEI?
Well, I think it depends on your definition and what that looks like. And I will say that when Hegseth got confirmed as the defense secretary, that he stood next to General CQ-Brown, and who is the president's top military advisor, effectively, and said that he looked forward to working with him. So we actually saw him strike quite a different tone after Hegseth had gone through the confirmation process. It was actually at the Pentagon. But one thing that was clear was this is something that has been long rumored for weeks now, that this was in the works, that this was going to happen, that they had not changed their minds on that feeling initially of General CQ-Brown ever since you heard those comments from Defense Secretary Pete Hegseth. And just to drive home how unusual this is, the chairman of the Joint Chiefs of Staff, Anderson, typically stays regardless of who the president is. Even if they change parties and it's a different administration, they stay for that 4-year term. And he started his in October of 2023. He succeeded General Mark Milley in this role. And so his term does not expire until the fall of 2027. But with this ouster tonight, Trump has removed him from his post and is now picking someone else to take this position, which really does drive home what you heard from Pete Hegseth in that interview back in November, blaming him for DEI policies. That is obviously part of this. And I've been talking to people in recent weeks. None of them would say on background or privately that CQ-Brown's job was assured in this role. I will note today he was posting pictures. He was at the southern border and was talking about the work that the military has been doing and what that partnership looks like. And so he clearly was still doing his job as of just a few hours ago before Trump announced on Truth Social tonight that he was ousting him.
Traditionally, I mean, correct me if I'm wrong, the chairman of the Joint Chiefs, usually as administrations change, that position often remains the same. It's not that each time a new president comes in, that person is removed.
Yeah, for example, General Mark Milley. That was Trump's actual handpicked Joint Chiefs of Staff chairman. It might be hard for some to believe given how much that relationship deteriorated and how Trump talks about Mark Milley now and is, posted things suggesting military tribunals for him. But that was actually someone that he handpicked in his first term to be the Joint Chiefs chairman and take on that role. It is a 4-year term. When President Biden won and took office, he kept Mark Milley in that role and did not fire him or oust him. And then when his term expired, that is when he picked CQ-Brown. It is now a 4-year role. It used to be every 2 years, I believe, and then they would go up for Senate confirmation once again. But typically, yeah, those are positions that stay on and that stays regardless of the political party. And so the thing to watch here tonight, though, Anderson, as this is the first major firing that we are seeing happening at the Pentagon since Trump took office just a little over a month ago, is whether anyone else is to follow. Because there have been rumors that have been rampant in Washington for weeks now that there is going to be mass firings, I would say multiple firings at the leadership at the Pentagon. It's been hard to run down whether or not that's actually going to happen, but tonight we are getting this late night announcement. The top military advisor to the president has been ousted.
All right, Caitlin Collins, thanks very much. We'll see you at the top of the hour for The Source. I want to play that soundbite of Pete Hegseth in November talking about General Brown.
Well, first of all, you got to fire you got to fire the chairman of the Joint Chiefs, and you got to fire this. I mean, obviously, you're going to bring in a new Secretary of Defense, but any general that was involved, general, admiral, whatever, that was involved in any of the DEI woke shit, it's got to go. Either you're in for war fighting, and that's it. And that's the only litmus test we care about.
Joining us now is Rahm Emanuel, former Obama White House Chief of Staff, former Chicago mayor, and currently CNN senior political and global affairs commentator. Ambassador, appreciate you being with us. I understand you know General Brown. What do you make of this firing?
Yes. Well, not only know him, I knew him as ambassador in Japan, and he has not extensive experience in the far Indo-Pacific area as a former Air Force head in Indo-PACOM. I think this, in a week of unsteadiness of America, the idea to also then on our national security profile to have this type of unsteadiness is projecting a level of weakness. Now, see how this plays out. Right now, China is doing a military exercise they've never done before off the coast of Australia. Live fire. It's impacted civil aviation there. Because of the weakness, China is doing something we have never, ever seen. What is the United States communicating? Chaos at home, a firing over some political difference, if that's the true reason. It is unsteady both in Europe, and now it's unsteady in the military. As a week of weakness, it is also projecting, I think, a level of chaos here. I think it's very, very reckless. And he has experience. I dealt with him many times as ambassador. His knowledge and the trust that Australia, New Zealand, his counterparts in India, in Japan, and South Korea, this is not the type of thing you want to have at a moment where people are trying to figure out where the United States is going, what the type of leadership is. I think it actually projects very bad, not just on the United States. It is something our adversaries are going to take advantage of.
President Trump also said he's going to have Defense Secretary Pete Hegseth solicit nominations for 5 more high-level military posts. Does that sound like, a purge of some sort at the highest levels of the American military? Is this common?
Well, you know this. First of all, the answer's in the question. No, it is not common. I was there for President Clinton and President Obama. You kept people in because there's something to the steadiness, the trust, and the relationships they build worldwide that people know they can count on America. His knowledge, CQ's General Brown's knowledge of the region I worked at extensively was a checkmate on China. There was many allies and friends that knew him and trusted him. I think you're going to have a level of impact where a lot of folks across the branches of the armed forces are going to start to look over their shoulder and pull back for risk of getting on the wrong side. This is not the moment in time. I think the United States wants our men and women, not just in their armed forces, but more importantly in their leadership, unsure and unsteady in questions. You have moments, and I just use this example because it's prevalent out there. China's doing something we've never seen off the coast of Australia in front of Sydney. And live fire. They've never done this. The United States is nowhere to be seen, found as a deterrent with one of our closest allies in the region. And now, rather than respond to China, we're firing the head of the Joint Chiefs. Imagine what that communicates not just to China, but across the globe as people look at the United States. Is this a country you're going to hang your hat on and you're going to actually draft behind because you understand and trust their leadership? And I say that because we had many dinners with all the Indo-PACOMs with President Obama. There's a connectivity between the president and the military leadership, and that's essential for our national security.
This also comes as a time as the war in Ukraine continues, and obviously there's now a realignment with this administration and our European allies, who traditionally have been our allies, and Russia.
Well, look, in this situation, and I've talked about it, written about this, I think what we're doing here is we're basically empowering our adversaries and endangering our allies. And the problem when you look at this is the United States, under Donald Trump, thinks of Ukraine as a real estate deal. They got 20%, they get that. That's how much Russia has now of Ukraine. Russia is looking at these negotiations. This is about Ukraine's sovereignty, and we're going to claim it. It's a totally different discussion between the United States. We're just looking at it, president's background. It's real estate. Russia sees the grand power play here in Europe, the projection. This is not just Ukraine's sovereignty. Moldova, Latvia, Lithuania, Estonia, Poland, every place where we put troops, they've now said we've not only gotten everything we've wanted on the United States leaving Ukraine vulnerable, we've gotten what we want on negotiations vis-a-vis NATO. We now want your troops out of Eastern Europe. They've added and they put, we see your 20, add 40 at the table. This is a dangerous precedent because we're projecting weakness, and weakness invites aggression, and you're seeing it play out in the Indo-Pacific right now.